Hi, my name's Vicky and I went to George, which is a small town on the Garden Route, about 500 kilometres away from Cape Town, and I went at the same time as Sam and Eloise went. And my background is I'm a junior doctor and I'm currently working at Bournemouth Hospital, and I'm going to tell you a bit about my project, was looking at theatre efficiency. So just as a bit of background, George is a government hospital and serves a population of just over 500,000 people. And I was given the task of looking at ways of improving theatre efficiency at the hospital, specifically looking at how we can improve services for surgical patients, improve staff satisfaction and teamwork, which is a particular problem, and also trying to look at ways to increase productivity, but using only resources that were already available. So there was no additional funding for the project. So having no experience in this whatsoever, we used ideas from the NHS Institute of Innovation and Improvement's Productive Series, which is a really good series of guides. And you can see at the bottom there is the Productive Operating Theatre programme, which is it's like a stepwise programme of improvement for NHS organisations. And it uses lean management principles, which were first developed in industry. And it looks at ways of trying to streamline processes, to standardise processes, to try and improve efficiency, and also to try and reduce waste as well. And you can see in the bottom corner there, the first step is called knowing how we're doing. And that's about using performance data to try and drive forward improvement, and also to try and measure the impact of what you've done to make sure there is an improvement. And that's a theme really that runs throughout all of these programmes. So with that in mind, my first outcome was to produce a theatre dashboard. And I initially thought it would be a really quick, simple thing to implement, but I was wrong. I first had to collect a whole baseline of performance data for the theatres, and that included things such as start times, cancellation rates, and feedback from staff surveys, and as well as a few inspirational quotes from Nelson Mandela, which went down quite well. And so when I first put this up, I thought, in the NHS we're quite used to having these kind of data displayed quite openly, but some of the surgeons were not quite so keen on having things like their cancellation rates up on display. So I was quite surprised by that, but actually once they learned that it was meant to be a positive thing, it actually served to generate a bit of a friendly competition between the different specialties. And interestingly, things like start times started to improve just because we were measuring them. The second project I looked at was looking at scheduling of the elective theatre lists. And this was a particular problem that was cited by the theatre staff, because a lot of times the list would overrun and then patients would get cancelled. So in collaboration with one of the consultant surgeons, we developed a theatre planner on Microsoft Excel and used historical procedure time data to try and get accurate estimates of operation timings. And as you can see from the graph, you can see from the green bars, that was after we implemented it. We got slightly better at trying to predict how long an operation would take, particularly those that were out by more than 30 minutes were reduced. So hopefully that will help to plan more accurate lists. The last thing that I looked at was the emergency list, and this was particularly quite a source of conflict between different specialties. So we wanted to try and formalise the way that patients are booked onto these lists and produce some kind of guideline. So what I did was to look both locally and internationally as well at different triage systems that are used to try and come up with this traffic light guideline, and that's what's currently being used at George. So having worked through these projects, I've really learned that actually having strong leadership is really important to make these things succeed, and particularly to try and get everybody on board with what you're doing, engage the team and get people's ideas and feedback so that people feel like they're involved in the change and are not just having something imposed upon them. And to do that, to try and keep those channels of communication open. Another thing that actually was quite important is that change is a really uncomfortable process for all of us. We get a bit stuck in our ways, and to try and support people through that learning curve. And also, things don't always happen as quickly as you expect them to, so be patient. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm currently training in obs and gynae, and it's been quite an interesting adjustment to go from having meetings every week with the CEO of the hospital, with the medical managers, to being an SHO and quite a small fish in a big pond again. And it's really helped me actually to appreciate how services and policies are developed and where I can have a role in those. And also, as I mentioned previously, to get those leadership skills to take on more projects. And also things like when you're at work and you're frustrated by something that doesn't work very well, to have the confidence to question, actually, why is this done this way, and is there a better way that it can be done? So my top tips for the next fellows would be, if possible, and it might not always be, to have a broad idea of what your project will be before you go out, and that's so that you can do a bit of background research about how those services work within the NHS. And also be very clear when you get there with your colleagues about what your level of knowledge and experience is, because they might assume that you're an expert in that field, which generally is not going to be the case. And also, when things go wrong, which they often do, then don't get disheartened and keep trying. So that's a very brief overview, and I'd just like to thank Fleur and Deborah and the IGH team for this opportunity, and to Sue for supporting me quite a lot throughout my placement, and to the team over at George Hospital as well. Thank you.